Hey guys, Todd here with Great Escape Farms. Today we are going to talk about planting pawpaw trees. And I actually sell hundreds of pawpaw trees out of my nursery every year. And I keep explaining the same thing over and over again. And I figured I'd do a video because as I explain things, I'm sure people don't get it all or they forget some of it. So this way they have something to go back to, check it out and see what's going on. So these are some of my pawpaws right here. They are individually planted in 14-inch tree pots. And I have other ones right here that are planted a lot closer together, and those will be separated when they're dormant. But each one of these, I'm going to go ahead and explain how to go ahead and plant them. So actually, I'm going to do it in 5 steps. So we're going to talk about picking the location and what is best for the plant versus what's best for you, and with regards to maintenance and stuff like that. Then we're going to talk about going ahead and digging the hole and the site prep itself. And then we're going to talk about planting the tree, how to do that, how far to do it based on whether it's bare root or whether you're in a tree pot. Then we are going to talk about how to protect the plant from deer and sunburn, a young plant. And then we are going to talk about maintenance and things that you'll do in the following years. So first thing we're going to talk about is site selection. As you can see, we have a lot of space here where we can put pawpaws, and actually I do have some up there. We'll go up and look at those in a minute. But that's really not the perfect spot for a pawpaw. The perfect spot is near water, so not right up against the edge. Actually, what I want to do is the perfect spot would be about 4 feet above the level of the water. So not 4 feet back, but 4 feet higher than the level of the water. That way its long tap roots can go down, find water if it wants, but it can also spread out and not drown or have wet feet, as they call it. So this is actually the site that we are going to put this one in right here. I'm actually replacing another plant that has good soil and everything else, and it died. So we'll get into the digging of that in a moment. Let me cover, not everybody has a pond or a stream close by, which is the natural habitat for a pawpaw. You'll usually find them close to water, but we can mock other ways to do it. So let me show you the next best way. Actually, the next best way would be right here, which would be a swale or a ditch on contour, and that would allow a water to be around, or a drainage ditch or something like that, to have water around and to keep it wet when it rains. And then up on the top I have something that I call the contour plant line. So I didn't dig a hole, but what I did is I put in a bunch of plants exactly on level, and then I built the soil up around it, and not by adding more soil, but by constantly adding mulch and adding compost up there. So we're going to go up and take a look at that one because I do have some pawpaws up there. While I'm crossing over it, this is what I was calling the swale. It's a ditch on contour. It's perfectly level. As water comes down the hill during a large thunderstorm, which we seem to get a lot of here in the mid-Atlantic, it stops and slows the water down, allows it to infiltrate and feed the roots of the plants here. The contour line up here, again, is not a ditch. It is just mulch and everything that is here to slow the plant down, or to slow the water down for the plant. So this plant right here was put in 2019. This is 2022. So it is been in the ground for 3 years. It's 2 years old when it went in. It is 5 years old, and you can see right there, I'm going to have flowers on it next year. So if pollinated, I will actually get fruit on this next year. And we are now up in a field, no water anywhere in sight, and we have several pawpaw trees here, all between 5 and 7 years old. And you can see this one, its leaves look droopy and a little bit yellowing there, and we're early September, actually mid-September, so a little bit early for that. So it's a little bit stressed, and that is because of water. And if you notice, we do have one great big pawpaw right here in my hand, and that will be coming up soon. But I haven't watered any of these, and we've had a bit of a drought this year. This one down here, again, same age as the others, you'll notice the leaves are not drooping as much. It doesn't look as stressed, and that's because I watered it. So when I water this, I actually, I water for about a half hour, 45 minutes on it. Try to give it a good couple of gallons around the base, and to really soak it in and hopefully try to drive the roots down a little bit further. And the only reason I watered this one, not the others, is we had hundreds of fruit on here. You can see there's still a couple down there on the ground I need to pick up later today. Actually, let me get in better light here. You see there's a couple down here, so I'll go ahead and get those and harvest the seeds out of them. But while this is not an ideal location for pawpaws, it's actually an excellent location. What I mean by that is they do absolutely wonderful in full sun once they're established, and they grow better fruit, more fruit, the tree is healthier, everything else. The only problem is during a drought I have to water it, so that makes more work on me. So that's why it is not really the best, and I will have to next year, because I'm gonna have a lot more fruit. I can tell all of these have a lot of buds on them. I'm gonna have to do a lot more watering next year on these if we get into a drought situation. I'm hoping that we don't. So the next step is dig a hole and site prep. So normally site prep would be to clear all this out. I don't feel like digging the weed whacker out, so I'm just gonna hand pull some of these weeds, and then I'm gonna go ahead and dig the hole. I would normally augment with a little bit of potting soil and mix it in, and I don't need to do that because this hole's already been dug previously and it has potting soil in it. A couple things to point out: if you're digging with a post hole digger or with an auger on the back of a tractor or something, you have to be careful because you can compact the soil, and if you do that, the roots could basically spiral around. So what you want to do is make sure that it's rough cut down on the bottom and that you don't have any compacted soil that is smooth where the roots go and they hit it and they kind of bend off. So you want to have cracks and crevices on the bottom and the sides of the soil just so that the roots can penetrate there. That's also, especially in clay soil here, very, very beneficial with the deep watering, because the deep water will actually take that clay, which is kind of like concrete, and make it soft so that the roots can penetrate and go down further and find water themselves. Okay, we're on a bit of a hill here, so it's a little bit tough to tell. I have the extra soil here, but it's a little bit tough to tell exactly where level is. So what I want to do is have the top of the soil right here even with the top over here. I do not want to bury any of the stem at all. If anything, I'd rather have it sticking up a little. So this is coming out better than I thought. So I just tilted it upside down, gave it a little, whoops, bottom part broke off a little bit. You can see the roots here coming down. And let me go ahead and take this off a little bit. If it was a bare root, you can see, hopefully I can get it up where you can see right here is where the soil level was. It changes color a little bit, and there's roots right at this point. So what you want to do with a bare root is you want to bury it up to this point right here. You don't want to come up here, and if anything, it's a little bit safer to come down a little bit, but try to make it exactly even here with the soil. And what I mean by that is we place it in the soil, we backfill a little bit, and what I want is to be even exactly with it there. And I have these rocks here. I'm just going to put them on the downward side here, and I'm going to go ahead and find a couple. Here's a couple. I'm going to find a couple more, and what I'm going to do is basically build a wall on the downward side right here. Hopefully you can see that. Let me move this back. On the downward side right here. So build a little wall to help hold the water in, and I am exactly even right here. So that is the depth and the level I want it planted. Okay, I went ahead and got more rocks to put around here. One thing I don't have right now, but I would do, is I would pull back the soil a little bit and put some mulch here. So I want mulch to hold moisture in, just to help this plant get over any stress or anything. So for deer and sun protection, there's a couple of ways to do it. Usually, if I'm outside of my deer fence, and actually I'm right here, I have a deer fence that's up 8 foot high, so I don't really have to worry about deer where I'm at, but I do have areas that are, and there's a lot of deer prevalent in this area. So what I do is I wrap a fence around it. So this is called field fence, and this is what I call 2x4 fence. I think that's what it's called. And just wrap it around so that deer can't get in it. And in order to hold it in place, because this will knock over really easy, we use a stake. So this is just a regular garden stake, and they also have something called T-posts, and I don't have any T-posts around, so just some kind of a garden stake. Your guys at the hardware store can help you out with that, or even a wooden stake if you have that. Because I don't have to worry about deer, what I'm going to use is just a tomato cage. So it will hold itself in the ground with the little poker things here on the bottom, so I can get that to hold itself in the ground. And the only thing I'm worried about is sun protection, because if that plant in the first 2 years or 18 inches, 16 or 18 inches, gets too much sun, the leaves will sunburn. And if it gets too much sunburn, the leaves will fall off and it will die. So I need to protect it from sun. I've had it for a year in 50% shade cloth. And what I need to do for the next year is put cardboard, protect it with something. I can use a burlap sack or whatever, protect it on the south facing side. Now I want to leave the north facing side open, and that way it will get enough light bouncing in as well as air and ventilation. So I put this post right here facing due south for me, which means that this is west and this is east. So I will put cardboard from this point half moon around over to here. And I already cut the cardboard and I ran my knee into it. Let me see if I can do this one-handed. Ran my knee into it like this just to bend it and give it a round shape. And then I put holes in the top and the bottom on each side here. And I use cable ties to hold them on. So I use cable ties a lot here on the farm. I always have some laying around, so it's real easy to use these. They also have cable ties that are reusable. These are not. These are use once and scrap, but they do have reusable ones, so you don't end up with the extra waste. The cardboard itself may not last a full year, and if it doesn't, I just cut another piece and redo it. I always have cardboard around. I use cardboard as weed block. This is what it looks like, and again, it's just wire tied on halfway around, and a little bit of sun is okay. I just don't want massive amount of sun, and I want it open air in the back to get ventilation through. A sunburned leaf, what it looks like is kind of a gray and faded looking and brown and shriveled up, usually on the ends wherever it gets the sun. And it doesn't take long for that to happen. And once it happens, eventually that leaf will fall off. And if that happens to all the leaves, again, you haven't got enough leaves to supply the roots and all with enough energy to survive, and it will die on you. Okay, next up is ongoing maintenance. So the cardboard comes off after the second year of age, which for me, because it's 1 year old plant, would be 1 year in the ground. So that would make it 2 years old. It should by then be 16 to 18 inches. I can remove the cardboard. If I have deer issues, I would still keep deer protection around. The deer they don't like the taste of elderberry or any of the naturals or natives to the mid-Atlantic area. So they don't like elderberry or pawpaw or anything like that. They don't like the flavor of the leaves. However, they try a leaf or two just to see if they like it. And by the time one and then all their buddies, usually they travel in packs of 6 or 7 during the summer. By the time they do that, they've eaten every leaf off, and again, it kills the plant. So you want to protect from deer until you get up about 4 or 5 feet, and then it has enough leaves that it's not going to cause an issue if a deer eat a couple of leaves. Until the actual stem itself gets to be about 2 inches around, you have to protect it from deer if you have a lot of deer around, especially bucks that go crazy during the rut. Once a plant is established, if we go through a drought, I will water it after a month of no rain. So I will give it a lot of water after a month with no rain. So I will give it probably 4 or 5 gallons to a plant and just let it soak in really, really deep and hopefully get down to the tap roots. And then I'll let it go for several more weeks without. And as you saw a little while ago up in the field, I have some that even though we did have drought this year, I didn't water them. They survived. They're looking sad, but they are surviving, and they are still putting out sprouts and buds and stuff for next year. So they will make it, but you'll have a much more healthy and happy plant if you do water it, if it goes a month without any rain. We also need to trim plants. So this plant has the perfect look. It is about 18 to 24 inches from the ground up to where I have my first branch coming out. So that one is perfect. I thought I saw another one down here. This is the one that, again, I have maybe 12 to 14 inches here on this one before I hit it. So not quite 18. I'd probably leave it because that's the lower branch there is definitely a more major branch. The one issue I do have here is this. This is a sucker, which is coming off of this root system here. So if I send up a bunch of suckers, I am taking energy away from the main plant here and sending it over here. If it is a grafted variety, which none of these in this row are, then it would sap away all of the energy to the suckers, and the graft will ultimately end up dying. But anyhow, I want one plant here, so I need to come in and cut it off. And what I'll do is I'll dig around it, and I'll probably go down about an inch or two into the ground here, or maybe a little further if I could do it without interrupting too many roots, and I'll cut it off right under their ground there. This is an example of a very poorly maintained pawpaw. I planted comfrey around it, and this is probably 3 or 4 years old. And actually, here's a stem right here that died, so that's actually a sucker that has come up. So what I need to do is trim around the pawpaw here, trim the comfrey back, and actually I can just pull it just so it gets a little bit of air in here like that. And I can use this as mulch. Comfrey will add a lot of nutrients to it, and that will help it a lot. I could still do a little more around the back, but you have to weed it around it, and best thing is mulch. The comfrey idea is a good idea, but I planted it too soon. This plant was too young when I did it, and the comfrey overtook it. Okay, this particular pawpaw is going to get a heavy pruning. As a matter of fact, it's so heavy I can't do it all in 1 year. I don't want to take more than 25% of the plant all in 1 year, and to do what I want, I would have to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this one branch right here and remove it, and that will be pretty close to 25% itself. And then I'm going to take this one lower branch as well. Then next year I will take this one and that one out. And the time I'm going to prune these is when the leaves are off. So I'm going to wait until winter. So I'll take the big one off in another month or two after all the leaves are off, and then in 13 months I will take the other two off, and that should give me one straight plant coming up here and solve my issues there. That one right here is looking good all the way up. That one is good enough. This one right here, I have a little guy right there. I will remove it. That would be right there. And another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for any bent or broken, and I don't think it's this one. It's another one where I saw the one down here where I had all the fruit. I had several branches that had a lot of fruit on it, and they were bent and broken. And I also don't want any crisscross branches. So here's one right here. So this one had a lot of fruit on it, and you can see it's just bent over. It was probably sticking straight up, but I need to cut this off, and I'll probably take this whole branch off right here, because what I want is these guys are coming up at an angle, and this one is going straight out. And when it weights down, it's actually going to cross and rub on the other one. So I'll take that out. I have a branch here that is coming down, so I'll take that out. And one that I didn't get this year because I was limiting what I was taking is the one to the right here. I will take that out, which will actually take a lot of the lower portion out here, but that will get it going nice and straight, have it up off the ground so I can easily weed and see what's going on under it. some other maintenance at a high level, and I will do a more detailed video on actually some of them I have. So pollinating, these are not pollinated by bees or butterflies. They're pollinated by flies and beetles. It's fetid. F-E-T-I-D is the plants actually smell like stink, and they attract the flies and the beetles. So you get better fruit production if you actually come out and hand pollinate them. And I just did a video this year on that. I'll go ahead and link to that in the show notes. And I will also show you a detailed video on actually pruning these things, the before, the after, as I'm actually doing it, and how to trim all of these things up. And let's see, next year, one thing I didn't do on this particular plant is thin the fruit. So I will also do a video on thinning the fruit next year, because this one already has a load of buds on it. So I know I will have to thin it. And by thinning, I will get larger fruit overall. So I'll have a separate video on that, but that won't come until the probably summer. So that is it for this video. If you have any questions at all, please include them in the show notes, or in the comment section below. I will go ahead and answer them. There's a lot of people that have questions, I'm sure, just like you, and we'll try to go ahead and get them answered. And if it's something that a lot of people have an interest in, I'll just go ahead and do a video on whatever that is. So thank you very much for tuning in, and have a wonderful day.